some things, make some announcements, which we do before most of the meetings. So in case of fire or other evacuation notice, use the doors on the east side of the room. Do not use the elevator or the doors behind the dais, but take the steps at the front or rear of the building and descend one level to the outside exit doors. We respectfully request that you do not move the furniture or equipment. When speaking at the podium, please state your name and address before you make comments. The board has received the project's application in advance of tonight's meeting and had adequate time to review the materials. The meeting will proceed as follows. The petitioner will present the agenda item to the board. The board will ask questions and discuss with the petitioner. The board will deliberate and make its recommendations. The chair reserves the right to pause or stop the meeting at any point due to technical issues or disruptive behavior. Okay, got that out of the way. Can we do roll call, please?
Duncan Black. Here. Marissa Colucci. Here. Tracy Conheiser-Rui. Dale Giuliani.
Here.
Pete Talty.
Yes. Okay, we're ready if you guys are.
Good evening, Chairman Giuliani and members of the DAB. Also with me this evening are Paul Bliss, the owner of PB Investors, the applicant, Chris Ortloff, who works for him, as well as Brian Slevar, the project architect from Carmina Wood Design, as well as Pat Sheedy, the project engineer from Carmina Wood Design. We took a preliminary look at this project during your meeting on May 25th of 2023. You had some comments. Ultimately, we've done, we believe, made a very concerted effort to address those comments through a series of submissions, including the Design Advisory Board application. I would note for the record that Ann was kind enough to provide us with a comprehensive review as the town's architect, and we did make an updated submission addressing that as well. I don't know if we want to walk through, if there's any PowerPoint slides we want to walk through quickly.
Sure.
Just to acclimate everyone on the project site, it consists of 3 parcels located at 1720 and 1740 Maple Road, which are on the left-hand side, and then 1760 Maple Road. The parcel at 1760 Maple Road is currently owned by McGuire. It was rezoned approximately 12 or 13 years ago and was envisioned at that point in time to be a multi-story office building. Right after that occurred, the demand for office space in the town of Amherst, throughout Western New York and elsewhere, was basically eliminated. And we, in late 2021, entered into a contract to purchase that site from McGuire. Mr. Bliss separately did acquire the 2 parcels on the left, which is the west, 1720 and 1740 Maple Road. Prior to presenting this project to you this evening, we've been subject to a very lengthy and extensive review process. That includes receiving a positive recommendation on a request to rezone this site from both OB and R3 by the Planning Board during its meeting on November 17th of last year. And then earlier this year, after holding a public hearing, the town board did rezone this project site to DC5, which of course is one of the town's relatively new mixed-use districts, hence triggering you being involved in the review process. We do have a site plan application that's pending before the planning board. We're hoping that we'll be in a position during the 3rd Thursday of October to receive a decision. But I do want to note for the record, the concept plan, I'm not talking about the architecture, the concept plan reflects a lot of input we received from the planning board, the town board, nearby property owners, all stakeholders during the review process. And to highlight what that is, as you can see, we have 2 mixed-use buildings, 4 stories each, one located out along the Maple Road frontage with the longer side of the building. And then the second building, which is to the east of that building, is also a 4-story building, which includes approximately 7,000 square feet of commercial space or retail space on the first floor. Mr. Bliss has been involved with a couple of very successful mixed-use projects located in the vicinity of Maine and Tennyson, and has some more in the works. And he's been very successful in being able to lease that space to retail and office tenants. And then along the back, per the recommendation of the adopted bicentennial comprehensive plan, we have 2-story townhomes with attached garages. We have provided extensive landscaping throughout the site, We've done our best to incorporate the design guidelines in terms of the layout, landscaping, lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So we think we've made a ton of progress since we were last here on a preliminary basis. And I want to note, when we were here on May 25th, that input was helpful. We had not yet filed an application, but it gave us a framework to address the comments. So with that being said, I think I'm going to turn over to Brian. Brian's going to really highlight what we've done since the project was previously presented to you. And I do want to note for the record, we've made a couple of very comprehensive submissions to the DAB and staff since originally filing the application. So with that being said, Brian.
Good evening. Brian Sleevar, Carmina Wood Design, Managing Principal. Like Sean stated already, I mean, we find that the preliminary review that we did with you guys is very valuable to us. It lets us have a very informal discussion about everything and then kind of really come to you tonight with a better defined plan, following all the advisory board guidelines. And we had all the great reviews with Ann and stuff in the interim too. So like Sean mentioned, we have the two buildings. Our 100% residential building fronts Maple Road. Our mixed-use building is running on the eastern side of that into the site. We have grounded the retail to take advantage of that existing shared parking that's there, and also with the DC5 zoning bringing everything up to the road. We felt that provided the best retail location for us, and then also activated the courtyard between the two buildings, and then all of our residential entrances on the backside, and the two that go to Maple. Do we want to move to the perspectives? Can we start with, yeah, do we have the A500 that we can start with maybe? It was the one with the perspectives on it. It was a A500, I think, the very first one.
I don't think it's on the.
Okay, all right, well, then here it is here. So one of the, okay, well, we can hold it on this, and then hopefully we can pass this around. But one of the big takeaways we had from last time was the flatness of the building, the plainness of the building, not having much relief in the building. Our materials were pretty minimal. So we've really tried to take that and amp that up. And the big thing we heard about the length of the building that fronts Maple and how long it is pushing 300 feet. So we've really tried to break that up into smaller, more residential scale blocks. We are working with plans that reflect what we have on the outside of the building. So there's a big integration between the unit layouts and our exterior. Everything stacks on this building, so obviously there's great window alignment vertically. But we provided great relief with our brick that steps up and down as it goes around the building. We have our fiber cement samples here for you guys to look at tonight. We used a variety of different treatments of those profiles, from flat panels to lap siding to rib panels that are the plank style. It gives us a great durable material, long life plan, doesn't fade, there's no painting and maintenance required, all the colors integrated to the product. So we feel that matched with the brick, we have a really durable building that's gonna last a long time and look great. We tried to vary the cornice line around the top by having, and you can kind of get a better feel for it in perspectives. On the 2D, you don't quite see it as much, but there is a lot of relief in the building now, both in and out, horizontally and vertically. We have tried to take the entrances that are in that top elevation on Maple, follow suit with our wood treatment wrap around the bigger blocks that we have there, and scale that down into those entrances. I mean, we have a really modern approach, so we've tried to take the more traditional base, middle, top, and kind of modernize that a little bit. So I feel like our roof line kind of does match the architecture of the building. So having a more traditional cornice, we didn't feel was appropriate. If you want to go to the next building, we can kind of. So this is the mixed-use building. The main difference here is the first floor height meets the 15-foot requirement. We don't quite know yet the commercial makeup, so we have more of a conceptual basis for the individual entrances, and everything is sort of plug and play with the storefronts and the doors to be able to put them where the tenant may need down the road. We have a continuous canopy for that reason alone right now with some signage on it to try to keep it flexible for the owner later. The interior side, the courtyard, the one on the bottom there, we have to have some back of house stuff at some point on a building that's 360 degrees. So we've tried to minimize where we're going to put some of the gas meters, and sort of that blank wall right there that you see on the bottom right is sort of the first pass for that. And then on the stair tower ends on the big building is where we're planning to put the gas meters there. Again, very similar architecture to the bigger building. Again, all the materials are very highly durable. And then we can go to the townhouses, I think, are next. So as we kind of scale back into the site, we take our density from the bigger mixed-use building down one level to the townhouses. We've tried to scale those down a little bit to more of a residential architecture, but still keeping with matching our bigger mixed-use buildings and our multifamily building. Again, the intent is the same exact materials. The only new one to introduce is the asphalt roof. But everything else is all the fiber cement panels you see here and brick for the bump outs and the baseline. And then the next one is our context photos. And I mean, the closest thing that we really have is across the street and the gas station up at the corner. For any context besides the actual site, which is the urgent care facility right there that we're sharing a parking lot with. We've tried to take sort of that low slung look and come up with our base and our little bit of a cantilever at that ground floor level to match that. But again, with all of this being very traditional architecture, that wasn't really what we were going for. And with the context being so spread out, we didn't feel that it really needed to contribute that much to our design. I think we're at the forefront of this new mixed-use development, and as properties cycle through, we really feel like they're going to be held to the DC5 and later standards, and you're going to get buildings that are a little bit more like ours down the road. Yeah, and these are all here. We've tried to put together just so you guys could get a visual before you could actually pick them up, but our storefront, again, is going to be a dark black aluminum material. The windows will be also kind of the same material. You can just fire through these. So again, here's one example of our broader coverage fiber cement panels. They're all basically made the same. The only difference is sort of some of the lap joints are tighter fitting, some give us reveals. All of them are concealed fasteners. To get the relief on the building, we'll have different depth Z furring to be able to push this thing in and out. And then you can kind of see in that photo how we would wrap that with some brake metal to close in that cavity. The brick that we picked here is you know, what we're proposing. We have a dark version and a light version. We tried to bring this blend here to sort of show those two. But certainly as we get more into that, we can always submit actual brick that we build it with, but that's the intent for those. Again, this is the V-groove fiber cement panels again that have that tighter fit. And then our more traditional lap siding fiber cement panels. And then again, you can kind of see how some of these details come together and attach. Everything's super clean. You know, fiber cement panels are water resistant, rot resistant, like we mentioned, fade resistant. So it's easily a 50-year building product. And then this is the last one for the upper brackets where we have some of the wood print on the panel. So again, it looks like real wood, but it's actually fiber cement.
The only thing I wanted to note, Sean Hopkins, again, is while it's not particularly relevant for this advisory board, we have also been soliciting input on what type of housing are we going to provide here. And Paul has made a commitment already, at least to certain individuals, that with respect to this site, 10% of these units will be designated as affordable units. They'll probably be tied to 80% AMI. Something we desperately need in the town of Amherst is some affordable housing. So Paul's looking to be at the forefront of that endeavor. It's also important to note that those units will be built to the exact same standards as the other units. So we're really making an effort. And I also want to emphasize there's been a real effort in terms of pedestrian connectivity. You'll see the sidewalks, the pedestrian areas, the courtyard, which mimics a very successful courtyard that Paul built between 6770 and 6790 Main Street. So while we've really made an effort, a very concerted effort, to try and address those design standards, as well as the standards in the zoning code for the mixed-use districts. So that's basically our information. As Brian indicated, we do have samples of the materials, and I also want to note Chris Ortloff from Paul's office has spent a great deal of time preparing detailed response letters, so if there's any very specific questions relative to that, we of course would welcome the opportunity to address them. I don't know if Paul or Chris or anyone else has anything they'd like to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Paul, for redoing this. Looks much better than the last meeting.
And if anyone wants to see the full-size 3D renderings, I can bring them up, at least get them closer.
Does anybody want to look at the materials? You want to look at the materials? You want a closer look at the materials? No?
Duncan, what would you like to see? Okay, I don't know if you
I
want.
guess. You want to look, Duncan?
Yeah, if you guys want to take a few minutes and come down and look at the materials and ask questions, that's okay. Or I can hand them up, whatever you'd prefer.
Okay, let's go down the line. Marissa, you want to start? You have any questions for the petitioner?
Can you outline where you're thinking of putting some exterior lighting?
Yeah, Paul, Paul, I don't know if you.
Hi, Paul Bliss. So what we try to do with the residential component is downlighting is much more, is well received by the residents. The uplighting becomes a little difficult. So what we've done in the past, working with Brian, is we've done some downlighting, and we've tried to do some, I don't know if the right term. Yeah, ribbon lighting as well. But if you've seen 6770 and 6790 in any of our other buildings, we light them up pretty well. And one of the reasons for that is obviously to show off the beauty of the building that I feel it is, and then security reasons as well. So I think with the only challenge that we may have, and if we even want to bring attention to it, would be the ends where you have the stair towers. So other than that, we're going to be looking at some downlighting, a little bit of ribbon, and there. And then each unit will have some fixtures on each side of the patio doors and/or the fixed doors. I think we have some without a patio door, but we will have some downlighting there as well. Down and up, right?
And what we typically do is once we know that this is our elevation, we work with our electrical engineers and we actually model some of the lighting so that we can present it to Paul, play with the values. And like you mentioned on the point, we actually ran that linear light around to highlight some of those features. So that would be something we try to do here too, but that gets more into the construction documents part of that.
I also would note when we did the original mixed-use project at 6790 Main Street, that involved a lot of meetings with the nearby neighbors, and they were actually the ones that expressed a preference right off the bat for downlighting versus uplighting and really keeping it on site. And I think it's been very well received by the neighborhood.
Is there a reason why you have the two different entrance styles? There's one that's just sort of like the gray panel with like the really big 1760.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that front onto Maple, which are the two at the third points there, we tried to really tie that in hard to that bracket look that we have, because we thought that would be some cool lighting to the street side. On the pedestrian side, we tried to get more of a canopy over top of that wider entrance. We do have units that are in there, so our width of that entrance, we tried to make it as wide as we could. But behind that blank wall is like our sprinkler room, some mechanical stuff, so really didn't lend itself to have windows in it. So we decided to go with the bigger signage and kind of keep that toned down a little bit on the interior side.
It's also important to note that any signage that we're presenting is conceptual and will require separate permits from the town. So we'll have to take a closer look at that.
No, it's kind of, it would have been nice to see some of that, like the sort of backwards knife edge that you're doing with the wood on that side where it's sort of the tenant facing.
Yeah, like we did on the
side.
commercial building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly explore picking that up. I mean, the nice thing is we can tie that right into the balcony, with
Right.
like what we did on a smaller building. Yeah, we could take a look at that.
Especially since that's where your tenants are
Sure.
entering,
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah.
Is this just questions or and comments, or what's the format we're following here?
I don't know.
That's, go ahead. Okay. There are three things. Well, one thing is building on Main Street is a fantastic building. I'd love to drive by it. I love the way the lighting was done, and what you've done here is, again, exciting. This is.
Thank you.
I drive by it every day. I live in that neighborhood also. There's three things that kind of catch my attention. One is I'm looking at the residential townhouses and the four-story buildings, and you're using the same materials. And what I keep looking at is I keep looking at the roof line. So you have a very exciting roof line along the street here, but I just can't see a kind of a geometric connection between the residential and this here. And I'm going back and forth between, well, should they be very distinct and separate and just connected with materials, or would some kind of geometric connection make more sense? Either I can't see the sense in putting any kind of gabled roof or pitched roof on this building, but the way you're breaking up space with the multi-use buildings the way you're, not space, but the relief in there, it seems to be, you have a much more traditional across the townhouses. I'd like to see something more exciting done with the townhouses, maybe something more groundbreaking with that. Not that it's unattractive on its own, but being that you have something so exciting going on, to bring in some of,
So let me give the thought process. It's a good comment. So the thought process was, we tried to mimic the best we could, some recommendations in the adopted comprehensive plan, was to try and keep those distinct. And what the comprehensive plan talks about is higher density, higher intensity up to the street, and this only pertains to the mixed-use districts, and then scaling back and transitioning gradually and appropriately to residential. So as Brian indicated, there really is no uniform architectural standard in this immediate vicinity. So what we did is we're trying to set the precedent for something new and exciting along Maple Road, but then as we head to the north, closer to the residential neighborhood directly behind us, which is a mature and very nice residential subdivision, have more residential style roofs rather than what I would say a townhome that you might see in an exciting location in downtown Buffalo. So that's the thought process. I think Brian and Paul, you would agree. We did, and I also want to note,
exactly, yes. And it's good to see the two of them next to each other. And that's, I keep looking at trying to picture, is that, and I don't know, this is a kind of an open muse, is that having the connection with the materials, or should something more surprising have happened with the roofs? And I'm not going to make that as any kind of demand, but that's just simply,
I think we are making the connection through materials. The other thing I want to note, we don't have the elevations here, but we did submit them. One thing that Paul pays probably more attention to than anyone else, any other developer in West New York, is the actual garages as well. And if you look at 67-7 and 67-90, literally the garages are as nice as the buildings. They cost twice as much to actually build per bay, but so we really want to, there's nowhere where you can look on the site and say, well, there's an attempt to cut corners or an attempt to reduce expenses. So, we think we've hit that appropriate mix of architectural styles, scaling from Maple to the residential neighborhood. So we're hoping that you'll agree.
Can I just jump in on that point, Pete? Sorry. So I think the same thing is sort of bothering me in that the front taller buildings, there's a clear identity of space. Once you get back to the townhomes, the vocabulary is reversed, right? So when you think of a townhome, you think of one unit that is sliced right next to each other. The way the roof lines are reading, you're combining two units, right? So the garage door of one unit looks like it belongs to the garage door of the next unit. And then the whiter piece, the cream color, you're combining two units. You know what I mean? So the vocabulary of this building is just much different because you're combining units together. When we think of a townhome, it's one unit that looks like it is someone's home. You're blurring, I think that's what's bothering me, is you're blurring the lines of the identity of the unit.
So, is it the front or the back or both?
It's both. It's both.
Obviously, the back, it gets a little more challenging, right, to create that separation you're talking about, but I'm not opposed to, so if you look at the units on the left and the units on the right, you see you've got that bump out on the second floor. Maybe gives it a little more definition to which unit that goes with.
Right, but looking at the top, so the darker brown, to me, that reads as one unit.
Okay.
Right, and then what's put back, just because of the roof lines, it looks like one unit. You know what I'm talking, you see what I'm hearing,
What we
right?
have right now is our demising wall is the center of the gable.
Right.
And I think what she's saying is that in our other building, our blocks should line up with our demising walls so that it looks more, do you know what I mean?
There's so much more geometry, right, at the front buildings, where here it's just a blend of where does my unit end?
Yeah, and I think our attempt was to try to, because we had a 10
part of our
unit
plan.
and a 9 unit, is we tried to have that residential look transitioning back into that neighborhood instead of having the traditional row house look, which, I mean, can be explored. But I think does that give it too much of an urban feel then for that neighborhood? I don't know.
I think, to your point, Pete, I think that's what's throwing off
okay,
the blend from the street in, is that
The first thing I looked at is, I'm like, what does the back of this thing look like? And the back, I think, was given pretty much the same weight as the front of
It was.
the townhouse. And then, so and I'm looking at the street layout, and everything seems to flow very well. But there's no surprises. Whereas the elevation along Maple is so surprising, so startling, so exciting.
Well, it's compartmentalized, right?
Yes,
There's
yes.
identity.
Yeah.
Where here, you can't tell where the units end because it's,
The gable is split, and I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
right,
That's,
I don't know,
We're discussing.
it just looks odd to me.
yeah, I have comments more on the residential, but and then the materials look good. I would have liked more surprises back
Yeah,
there with that.
yeah,
That's,
agreed.
and then another comment, moving on to is the public spaces. One thing that we have is we want the public spaces to be available to the public, and it's overtly not that. And even the comments in the write-up here say that you privatize the public space. I'm assuming that was something that was conscious.
Well, explain, so Paul has a lot of history now working with the amenities and green space at 6770, 6790. Paul, you want to give a little overview how that's typically utilized and whether people from the neighborhood go on the site, et cetera, et cetera?
Positive or the negative?
And the negative.
Yeah, so we have a very similar setup at 6790, 6770 Main Street. So we have a common area there that's open to the public. Mostly it's just residents and/or visitors to the commercial space on the first floor. So it won't be closed off to the public. We try to get it, keep it a little private so you're not inviting problems. And I can elaborate on that, but we try to make it inviting to the public as much as we can, but also creating some privacy there too, right? So one of the things we did on Main Street is that it created a little bit of a wind tunnel, right? So the wind comes in from a southwest direction. Sorry to go down to my, Channel 7 news weather forecast here, but the wind would come in and go right through between the buildings and create this wind tunnel. So we had to create a barrier, which sometimes makes it less inviting, right, for the public to use, but it's still a usable space. So we have to be careful with that, but we're open to that as well, ideas.
And along that, there are two public spaces, one being the tree-lined area, the tree area between the parking, and the other being the area between the two four-story buildings. And the area between the four-story buildings, I'm looking at the landscaping, and there'll be a good opportunity as it comes out towards Main Street to do something a little more of a spectacle.
Transit Road.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Maple Road. Yeah, so what we'd like to do too, and we haven't done this quite yet, but on the corners, so the entrance, so it'd be the west entrance, and you have an east entrance. Near that sidewalk, put in some additional landscaping in there, create a little bit of a focal point.
And I'd say there's actually three places that. One is at each of the west and the east entrances, but then also between the two buildings where you have kind of that courtyard space
Yes.
between the two. That putting something there would both make it appealing, but at the same time, let you know that it was somebody
Correct.
else's space. That's, I think that would just be an opportunity.
And if we go back to the townhomes as well, there'll be substantial landscaping in there as well. I know it's not going to split the units. What I want to be careful of as well with the townhomes, if I can go back to that, if you don't mind. I don't want the units to be different colors. So I want to be careful that I don't do like a checkered board unit there as well. I'm not opposed to breaking up that front some way, somehow, but I just don't know how you do it with different colors tastefully.
And I don't know if it needs to be different colors. I think it's with the roof line, right? Because if I'm living here, where's my house? Where's my neighbor's house, right? It's that identity of space. And it's speaking a different language than the buildings in the front. So I think there could be more blend between the
Right.
two. I'm not saying it has to be identical to that, but there's clear identity in the front building and very, particular details and blocking, massing that we lose here. I love the elevation. I think it looks great on its own. The parameters within, not quite settling as part of the site.
From a marketing perspective, we want them to appear to be bigger than they really are. Just kidding. Just kidding.
The other cool thing is obviously, again, per the mixed-use standards, we got garages on different, we're doing something that's definitely out of the ordinary, and hopefully, again, becomes more commonplace in the town of Amherst.
Yeah, I think as far as a better suggestion, rather than, I made an observation now, probably a better suggestion would be the way that you're playing with the elevation and relief on the front building, the way that you're playing with different window styles, the way there's a lot of unexpected things happening there.
Right.
Whereas when I look at this is very typical. I'm looking at double hung windows, I'm looking at gables, they're all the same pitch, all the eaves are at the same height. I'm not seeing the excitement. That's it's there in spades on the front buildings. There's no question about that. I just, a little more liberty would have been, I captured some of the excitement that you had presented on the front buildings, brought that back.
I mean, again, as Paul indicated, we spent a lot of time, we're certainly willing to entertain that, but we want to make sure that these buildings definitely stay residential, and it's clear as day to anyone, including the neighbors behind, that these are meant to be residential buildings.
And I just want to make one other point, and that's regarding, we have a request for some kind of public art within the spaces. And I think that we kind of think of art as like something that is applied at the end. It's something you walk by and look at. But we're looking for bike racks. There's ways to take things and ornament them in much more interesting ways. Think about the bike racks they have out at UB at Reiner Hall. That's kind of, you can use as a practical way to bring art or something.
Yeah, we're not that far along, but we're open to those ideas.
That would be a suggestion.
We absolutely will have bike racks, benches, furniture, and EV charging stations as well. So that's not on the plan quite yet. Not that that's art, but we will have all that stuff. But bike racks, absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul, what about some kind of public art aspect? Is something we're going to consider?
I'm not.
Sculpture. I'm just saying,
There's sculpture, or it could be something functional. Maybe the bike rack has some flair. Maybe the benches are not just your typical park benches, but they could be something more interesting. That's the way to bring art in and make it functional also. And that's the extent of my comments.
Okay.
It's a very nice project. I'm looking forward to driving by this in the morning.
Thank you.
And again, a lot of that reflects the fact, you guys, some of us weren't here. We had a tough first meeting, but we went back and actually looked at the minutes, and the input was really helpful.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, maybe we should have been a little more prepared in hindsight. But as you know, we've now taken 4 months to really thoughtfully try to incorporate that input.
And that was something very noticeable the first time I was going through this. I was like,
So it's still a process at work.
all set. Those are my comments.
I'd like to start by just saying thank you, that I think you've done a great job of interpreting what was being said, and this is a much better project at this point. I was disappointed because I commented before about Faybrook and how it's shaped, and in this case you just have the major building all right down Maple Road, which I don't happen to, it's a personal thing I don't happen to like, but you've done a lot to make it more pleasing as a building. And you've listened, you've brought things, you brought good materials. So at this point, I'd just like to say thank you for listening, and hopefully next time I can get more through.
Again, you're very welcome, and again, we appreciate the time and effort that's been made by everyone involved, not only this committee, but the planning department and others. So we think this will be a very successful and well-received project.
Tracy, do you have anything more?
I think just similar to what you said on, well, we talked about the back buildings, but the facade along Maple, it's a 4-story building very close to the road, so yes, that may be okay for town guidelines, zoning, but it is a massive wall. So it does look like you have some trees out there to kind of break down scale, but
We do.
I guess just a comment, it's going to be a massive building that doesn't quite seem to fit in that area in terms of that verticality at the road. I think what you've done with the elevation may help break it up a little bit, but it does seem like a big building. But that's my only comment.
Sure.
Aside.
That's it? Okay, thank you. All right. Let's go through the design guidelines just to make sure we didn't miss anything as we're going through. I'm going to start on B, not on A. I'm going to start on B. B1A, design the building to incorporate a base, middle, and cap to divide the facade into separate components that produce a well-defined ground or lower floors and a distinctive cap element framing the middle floors, especially on taller buildings. I think they've managed to do that. Do you agree? Okay. On larger buildings, frontage, implement a variety of facade treatments to provide visual distinction, variety in the appearance of multiple structures to break up the facades. I think they did that too. You agree? Arrange elements on the facade, so for example, windows, doors, canopies, to create a generally consistent rhythm and overall visual interest. That was accomplished too, right? Entryways. Doors and entryways should be of a style, scale, and coverage appropriate to the overall architectural style of the building. I think they accomplished that too, didn't they? The primary interest of the building should be clearly defined. Well, there's more than one primary interest, but I think each one was pretty well defined. I don't think you'd have a problem finding it. Incorporate accessibility into primary interests without the need for switchbacks or railings. I think they accomplished that too. Commercial buildings should have a transparent primary entrance. Well, and again, there's more than one primary entrance, so I think they accomplished that with various interests. Okay, windows should be of a scale and proportion approximate to the overall architectural style of the building and in character with the window sizes of adjacent buildings and sites. I think they accomplished that also. Agree? Everybody agrees? Okay. Okay, windows to create visual continuity. I think that's very continuous. Window opening should be trimmed with an appropriate material. I think you guys did a good job on that. Roofs and architectural details. Architectural details such as overhang cornices, eaves, and parapets should complement the architectural style of the building and surrounding context. Roof line should be in character with the overall style of the building. Cornices should be used to differentiate and enhance the vertical composition of the facade. Building stories, cornices, lines, and other horizontal elements should be considered generally consistent with the adjacent buildings to provide a rhythm to the streetscape. Well, I would kind of say that that one really doesn't apply, and there's not a heck of a lot next to you guys there. Varying the building placement, setbacks from the street on a large building helps break up the block and reduce the impact of long buildings on the streetscape. Let me ask you guys a question. How far back from the street is that building going to be?
Pat, how far, what's our front yard setbacks of the two buildings? Come on up.
Hi, Pat Cheedy, Carmino Design, project engineer. From the right-of-way, the building is approximately 12 to 15 feet offset, and then from the curb line of Maple Road, it's over 30 feet.
Over what?
30 feet.
30 feet. Okay. I guess that's okay. 30 feet's pretty good, right? You think 30 feet's enough? Yeah?
Screwing everything up.
No,
That's
you
not
can't,
what
yeah.
do.
Can't.
No, but, you know, I'm glad it's 30 feet. I was concerned that it might be even less. So, that's good, okay. Varying the building placement setback from the street on a large building helps break up the block and reduce the impact of long buildings on the street. Doesn't really apply. Architectural lighting may be used to enhance specific elements of the building. You guys did a nice job with the lighting on the Main Street building, so I'm sure you'll do the same thing on this one, too. Street level interest. Design a building to provide interest at the street level adjacent to the public realm. Incorporate landscaping along the ground floor of the building. We really don't have a landscape plan, but I'm presuming you intend to frame the building pretty well.
Yeah, we do have a landscape
Do
plan.
you have it there?
Yeah, and it does show very extensive landscaping,
Oh,
including,
I'm sorry, we do have a landscape plan. Yeah, right.
including trees along Main Street. And then we did receive input, obviously, this evening from one of the members about at those corner locations, and I think we're fine enhancing some landscaping there.
Okay. Should seek to reduce water usage and reuse water with the building. should seek to reduce energy use and generate energy on site. I guess you're gonna do that.
Well, except for all fixtures will comply with the current most stringent standards in the energy code. So I mean, that does improve over time.
Right, you're gonna put a new building, you're not gonna put antiquated equipment in it.
Right.
Yeah, so. Building materials, use high-quality, durable building materials. I think that looking at the samples, they all look very nice, and they look like they have some longevity to them. With the Buffalo winters, who really knows whether they last or they don't last? Use responsibly sourced and long-lasting building materials. Any side or rear wall facing a street, residential district, or public must be consistent with the same finish, primary material as the primary facade. Well, you did that too. Decorative masonry such as split face and textured finish blocks are discouraged, but may be considered, well, you didn't do that, so you won't have to worry about that either. Exterior finishes material for renovation, additions, and rehabilitation should be consistent with those being retained on the existing structure. Exterior insulation finish system, EIFS, should not be utilized as a primary building material. We didn't do that either. Okay, public realm. Open space should ideally be centrally located. Yes, you're pretty well centrally located as well you can be. Open spaces should contribute to an existing or planned open space or greenway network when possible. Open spaces should be easily accessible by everyone. I think that you brought up something that you really didn't mean to bring up, but I happen to agree with you. Some of this is dependent on the neighborhood that you're in and who's going to be the public realm. There could be problems sometimes, too.
Yeah, and Paul didn't get into the problems, but he tries to find that fine line of public access and also keeping it safe. There has been some very serious vandalism at 67, 76. He just didn't want to get into the details. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, right, always a work in progress. Open spaces should be designed to be proportionate in scale to the surrounding context. Existing natural features and systems should be utilized or highlighted in the design of an open space. Open spaces should be programmed in ways that allow for a variety of uses. I'm kind of tossed on that one. The reason being, I mean, you're not going to put tennis court in, and you're not going to have an area that you can barbecue in. But I don't think in this particular instance that even applies.
Let's talk about Publis. So the area between the streetscape we created, left to right, parking for the four-story building, in that green space area there, we'll be creating some public space for use for the tenants or anyone else.
But it's going to be open for the people that live there, but you're not going to designate a particular area with particular facilities for anything, are you?
We haven't yet. We do have a few desires there, potentially a small dog park, potentially, obviously not pickleball, which is very popular, but we don't, the noise creates a problem. Maybe some bocce, some other things in that area.
Okay. Incorporate pedestrian and bicycle amenities such as seating, trash receptacles, drinking fountains, bicycle parking, and pedestrian island. Okay, sidewalk. Coordinate building elements such as furnishings, overhangs, lighting, and signs to create an engaged sidewalk space. Well, you're going to be dependent upon who you lease the space to a large degree there. That's going to determine the signage, and you're going to have to go before the town for that anyhow. So, sidewalk elements should be scaled according to their context, including the intensity of activity, building heights, and noise levels. Locate exterior uses and amenities to support and connect to the interior activities. Use surface materials that complement the structure and character of the area. We okay with all that?
Yep.
Okay. Curb zone. Streetscape amenities may be placed in the curb zone with approval of the town or other regulated. You don't intend to do any of that, do you?
This one.
We do have, yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Between the street and the building, you're not going to do anything weird.
Along Maple, you're saying?
What?
Along Maple, you're saying?
I still can't understand you.
Along Maple.
Right,
Oh, no, no. All streetscape features will be along the centralized core street on the site, yeah.
Okay. Trees and other landscapes should be planted within the curb zone. I'm sure you're gonna do that too. Okay. That really completes that.
Chair, can you go back to section 8?
A, yes. Good thing you said that, I forgot about that. A, pedestrian access and connectivity. Establish a continuous internal walkway system throughout the site. Pretty well defined, I think.
And we have a lot of sidewalks on site.
Provide a physical pedestrian connection between the site and nearby public space. Well, there's no nearby public space. Provide public pedestrian access through a block. You're taking up most of the block. What? Yeah. Locate and program an amenity space to receive regular use. You already did that. Place amenity space so it is connected to the public realm. I don't think you can do that.
Except the courtyard is. I mean, the public realm does include Maple.
Right, yeah. Design should not appear to privatize the space. It's a pretty open design.
Right.
Provide connection to existing or planned bike paths. Well, that's not the area that has any bike paths, so you don't have to worry about that. Incorporate bicycle amenities into site plans. You're gonna do that. Encourage the inclusion of public art in the project.
Yeah, so that standard encourages it, and again, we'll take a look at that.
Preserve existing viable, healthy, and attractive trees. You could have pretty well just mowed the whole thing down, aren't you? Steph?
Yeah, Pat, you want to talk about grading necessary on the site to meet stormwater management standards, sewer, et cetera?
Yeah, so the current site used to have 3 residential houses on it that are no longer there. The site is pretty flat, but it does slope from south to north, so from Maple to, the north side of the site here. That's what we proposed, our stormwater management area in the top left corner of the site. The site is pretty flat as we have it proposed, so there'll be, various catch basins throughout the site to collect stormwater. Sanitary sewer will connect onto Maple Road, as well as the water services. And then as far as landscaping and trees are concerned, yeah, most of the trees on the site will have to be removed for the development. We're going to preserve as many as we can along the creek on the west side. But we are proposing 19 different various species of trees throughout the site, and then obviously shrubs and decorative grasses, things of that nature too.
Okay. You already mentioned the stormwater management system through the use of low-impact development and other green infrastructure approaches.
And we do have green infrastructure as required by the DEC.
Use a coordinated landscape plan and materials palette to assess. You did that too. Chose appropriate trees and plant specimens. I think you're okay there too. Integrate low-impact development features throughout the site to minimize the impact of the municipal storm water system and area watersheds, and use landscape to reduce heating and cooling needs. I don't think that applies at all. Okay. Last page. Include materials and natural features that conserve and promote wild habitat and local biodiversity. I don't think that applies either. Reuse site or construction material. Take into consideration the project's building and site elements that are located near the residential transition, which you took by putting the townhouses in the back. Use wall and fence materials that can be maximized to long-lasting as the principal building. Use colors that match or complement the principal buildings or are subdued and blended with the natural environment. I think you did that all the way around. Okay. Before we vote on this, does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make? Are we all talked out? We're all talked out? Okay. All right. Let's take a vote on the project as it stands now with all the answers that we got tonight. All in favor? We got to do a roll call, don't we?
Conditions that you guys are any findings you guys are putting on this?
Good idea. Thank you, Mr. Platt. So somebody would like to make a motion to approve and somebody second?
Mr. Chair, there are some recommended
Okay, with conditions.
Before the application checklist, the blurb, draft resolution, findings.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete.
The first one would be the final site plan, identify furnishings and outdoor amenity spaces. Second condition would be the final site plan include a bicycle racks on the east side of the mixed-use building. Third would be that the final plan indicate proposed locations and nature of public garden. Fourth, that the final site plan be revised to replace the proposed white vinyl fence with material that better complements the building material and are more likely to last as long as the principal building. And the fifth one is that the final site plan includes streetscape amenities along the proposed local street. Of course, Street has an entrance, road does not. And then if there's any other findings that you want to add.
Okay.
It sounds like there's two items on that list that we didn't really go over. One of them being the discussion about the white vinyl fence, and the other being streetscape amenities along Maple. As far as the fence itself, is there anything that lasts longer than vinyl that you can use for a fence?
So Paul, do you want to answer the question about fencing options?
Yeah, you've either got the vinyl in different colors, or you can do a wood fence, which needs to be maintained. So we could do either. And there are some fences there already, so we have to deal with that a little bit when we get to the site plan.
Would you be opposed to reaching out to the neighbors behind the townhouses to get some input? Maybe they would like something.
I mean, we're certainly open to that idea. The problem is, and I've been down that path many times, it's sometimes challenging to get a consensus. And what we don't want to do is, we've been in instances where we actually put different types of fences and that it looks awkward in the end.
I think with the materials that are shown, there's actually one of the pieces of material where the large white areas is actually very similar to what white vinyl looks like. Does anybody really object to a white vinyl fence?
Yeah.
I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too.
Then I'll,
Do you object to the
I'll sit back.
color material?
I'm not a fan of the vinyl, but I think the white vinyl tends to look
Start.
stark, a little cheap, so I would recommend maybe in the gray tones that are complementary of the building, if you're gonna stick with vinyl.
Think about that.
There's,
We can do that. I mean, is anyone opposed to wood?
Yeah, you don't want to do wood because you have to maintain it.
I also want it to look good as well, right? So you will see it behind the pond. So
I
that,
think part of it with the white, it is just, especially you get that along the whole backside would be awful, but if it was like a white trim and a tan or a different color in the panels, something that would pick up the colors in the other would reduce the impact of the fence. Just driving around this town, you see a lot of places where people have just a big white vinyl fence, and it's really awful. And if there's some sun out, it glares right off of it and is very intrusive. Whereas other places where they've broken it up in the color, to me, it's much more, appealing to.
is anyone opposed to wood? I can do wood.
No, I'm not.
I'm not opposed to wood, but would you really want to put something that has to be maintained?
Well, the white fence across the street at Faybrook, we clean that fence every other year.
You do?
Yeah.
So you power wash it?
We power wash it, and sometimes it takes a little bit more than power washing. So we do some type of maintenance there. So, and believe it or not, the wood fence is comparable in price to the vinyl
Really?
right now, yes. So I'm not opposed to doing wood. And
I
Mike,
think the wood actually looks better, at least.
I'd prefer-
better than the neighbors behind.
Yeah, that'd be my
I think
preference.
if you ask,
Absolutely.
I think if you ask the neighbors, they probably would agree with you.
and we'll make sure we put the good side towards the neighbors.
All right.
Right, Dan?
So if you want to recommend that we substitute the vinyl fence with a wood fence, we're okay with that.
Okay,
Good.
that's part of the conditions.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And then the last condition was including some kind of streetscape amenities along Maple.
What kind of streets amenities would you propose?
I don't know. That's, there is nothing as it is. We're looking at the last item that was on the proposed list for conditions was putting some kind of streetscape amenities along Maple Road. So it wasn't just something you walk past.
The local street is the street coming in off of Maple, perpendicular to Maple.
Oh,
Not on Maple.
you're not talking about Maple, you're
No,
talking,
the new drive-in,
oh,
not,
That's Young's Road, right?
yes, that's Young's over here.
Just to make clear, what area are we referencing? Because I'm having trouble hearing too.
here. Sorry, Sean.
Gary's Point, Chris Orloff, Bliss. Gary's Point is about the small, short street to the west of the main building, which is identified as a local street, where the street up at the top is the core street. Neither of those is Maple. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes.
So on the very left, the vertical street, where he's calling that there's no streetscaping. And we can certainly provide,
We're talking about this
Right, that's what, yeah.
stretch here.
And we did add landscaping based on the meeting we most recently had with the planning department on the western side of that. And it's reflected on the updated landscape plan.
Landscaping should be sufficient.
I know.
What we meant, local.
Local, okay, so local you're referring to Young's Road. That's- No.
This
here.
this proposed
It's the road
street here.
in there.
Oh,
It's actually
okay.
It's labeled local street on your plans.
Oh,
The core street is the one farther to the north.
With the parallel park.
The local is the one that goes north-south.
I didn't even think about that.
Young's is down.
yes. Yeah, no, I see where it's labeled as local street. I see what you're talking about now.
Okay. All right, what else? We all set? Somebody like to make a motion to approve with conditions?
We're excluding amenities along that area.
Oh, we're including.
Oh, yeah, we're including
Yeah,
that.
it's part of the conditions.
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion to
Okay,
approve with conditions.
somebody want a second? Okay, Tracy. Peter and Tracy. With conditions.
All right. Duncan Black,
Aye.
Marissa Colucci, Tracy Conhiser-Rui,
Aye.
Dal Giuliani,
Aye.
Pete Tulty.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll invite you when when we have the grand opening.
With the coffee shop, right?
Can I make one quick comment before we adjourn?
Yeah. Before we adjourn, Mr. Black would like to make a comment.
I should have, or was a little remiss when I thanked you for all the work that you've done of meeting it, that I didn't also include all of the planning department and the work that they did. The staff really helped us put this together and bring it together. And I think it's a nice change to see the way the staff has been handling the work with us recently. So I just want to say thank you to all of everybody for what they've done.
And we want to echo that same comment.
Okay, we have one more item. We have to approve the minutes from August meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the meeting minutes? Someone like to make
I'll
a...
move approval.
Mr. Black, move approved. Do we have a second?
I think you need to,
Okay.
yeah.
Will you do roll call one more time?
Duncan Black,
Aye.
Marissa Colucci, Tracy Conhiser-Rui,
Aye.
Dale Giuliani,
Yes.
Pete Tulty.
All right, guys. Very interesting evening. Thanks for your help. I forgot the conditions. I completely,
Oh, that was some of our neighbors over there.